Hello, Sonia. I think that we really kind of caught ourselves on a very interesting half sort of subject last time, just to try to keep ourselves accountable with the timing. And so what do you think? So do you think that's the right type of the dimension that we are going into?
I think I have a lot of questions now.
Well, that's if anything, that's a great justification that we are actually touching something practical, right? So because
That's it, because we were talking first about the importance and relevance of having a routine, which I think it's not only necessary for a child with CP, but also I was thinking maybe for children with autism or that kind of a spectrum also.
absolutely.
But next, once we have the routine, we get the opportunity to zoom in, right? But well, you propose to make some changes in order to see different things. But I was wondering, what should I be looking for in those moments? Should I be looking for instance, in what position Rocio is more relaxed? For instance, when I feed her, or what positioning helps her participates more? What's the aim? What's the goal I should be looking for?
Okay, that's a good question, right? That's a good question. Again, very practical indeed. So you see, that's the two sides of the coin, right? So and
Okay.
in that respect, so first of all, we were talking about the context, right? The context is that when typically we have a tendency to do those things, to do those routines. As the caregivers, we have a tendency to do those routines based on our convenience and the utilitarian optimization, right? And we become so tunneled in that we don't even think about changing those contexts at all. So again, and we know the context is that it's the same story. We're not doing it in the vacuum. It's happening in the very real apartments, very real, let's say houses, very real, rooms, where there are very real beds and so on. So where there are, very specific layouts. So, and sometimes it's easy to change, sometimes it's not easy to change, but it's also paying attention to how you do it, right? So you see, like, again, if you start, if you have a tendency to do it with the same leg, so obviously you have to start thinking, okay, well, first of all, how relaxed you should be when I'm doing it, or what kind of initiation I can take, starting the other leg, and what range I will do this, and how well I'm going to wait for her transitions through it, so that I can do that opening without the excessive engagement or for minimizing, for instance, the engagement of the adductors. So, and here we have this three components, right? So basically the rules are very simple, and then it's going to be like a combination of those. So you have a very simple judgment. So you want to minimize the engagement of the negatives, right? You want
Of
to
course.
potentiate as much as possible the relaxed and comfortable state, which would be the neutral one, and you want to create the opportunities for the child to get that threshold of participation entry, to make it as easy as possible. And it's also taking the fourth part, right? So if she wants to switch off, right, and rest after certain participation, that it will be readily available as well, right? So again, you have those two sides of the relaxed position before activity itself, comfortable transition out of the activity, right? Because you see, simple thing. For instance, if you look at the way how, let's say, the head is positioned during the feeding, right? You can have different levels of the support, and you can have a different level of reach of how much she is going to reach towards your spoon, for instance, right? So you can go intense and say, you know what, if I kind of start bringing the spoon towards her, and then I want her to follow the spoon and kind of try to catch up with the spoon, right? So you do with the big move and actually do that off the spoon so that she lifts
Okay.
herself. That's obviously a more demanding thing. So she has to be very fresh, she has to be very engaged and so on to be able to do this, even if, and that's a big combined effort that it will, you have to realize that she won't be able to do that many of those, right? So that means that you have to prepare yourself and say, okay, you have to mentally pre-calculate, okay, this is how much she can come up, this is what I can encourage, so she does it for 2-3 times in that, so that's my kind of peak performance, and then she has to go into the more comfortable position when she's, it's easier for her to rest. But now the next thing is that you're coming closer to her, so the next thing is like, okay, the extreme is that she's just opening the mouth and you are just shuffling it, right? So that's what you don't want. So the next thing from that maximum of her coming all the way up to you and at the same time doing the mouth grab of what is on the spoon and then returning, that would be really the ideal scenario, right? But then you have the next increment. And what is the next increment? You bringing the spoon closer, but then you're observing the participation of the lips and tongue, right? So you see that she actually just not just passively reacting to the spoon, but she's actually doing some, at least intention, some kind of packing the lips and then getting this and sort of getting some of it. So, and that's the sense. So those are the increments that you are looking at. And then if you see that after a while, she even tired of that, so she needs a break, and you still have, I don't know, like 10 more spoons left, then you tell yourself, cool down, she needs to rest, right? And even if the food is getting cold, again, what is the judgment that you have to imply? You have to go with her. Because so many, in almost in every mother there is a celebrity chef, like, my food, let's say if it gets cold, it's not going to taste that well, she has to eat it now, otherwise it's not. But in most of the cases, actually the child doesn't care about that, right? So you see, meaning that she's still quite happy to eat it even when it's cold, but when she's more ready. So, and that's what I'm saying, it's so important to get this sense of priorities and timing so that you are looking at kind of the total index and saying, my 40 spoons that I use for this feeding, so you create a kind of, a chart and saying, well, out of those spoons I have, my A, B, C, the 5-point spoons, 4-point spoons, 3-point spoons, and then, maybe 0-point spoons, right? So the 0-point spoons are the ones that you shuffle down her mouth, right? So you see, you shuffled it, so she didn't participate, you just threw it, let's say via esophagus, towards her stomach. That's 0-point spoon. The spoon that she actually tracked and caught and then lifted herself in and kind of being able to come up, that's a 5-point spoon, right? And then that's where you have to define your own range and say, what, this is where she is. So she has, for instance, the spoon where she indicated the intention to reach but hasn't completed and then, participated, let's say with the whole face and mouth. Well, maybe that's a 4-point spoon, right? The spoon when she was only able to, to integrate the lips and so on, but then so she also did the lips but also did some mouth play, active mouth play. That's a 3-point spoon, right? And then when she did, she still did the lips, but then she was not engaged enough to do the mouth plays. Maybe that's a 1-point spoon, right? And you can see that if things are moving down to say to a 1-point spoon, bang, we press the pause button. She needs a break. And
that's a very practical example of zooming in, how you zoom in a practical way.
Absolutely. So that's exactly my point. So, but then, and that's what you want to say. You're saying, okay, and that's how you're looking and say, I have 40 spoons to deliver, and then what do I want to do? I want to earn as many points as possible, but within her averages, right? So you say, again, not during the Paralympic, I want to have, 40 spoons of 5 points. That's not realistic. You today you have your kind of distribution, and you're saying, well, okay, on average, if she's fresh, maybe she will give me 3-4 of these 5-point spoons, right? So maybe she'll give me whatever 15-20 of the 4-point spoons, and say most of the whatever. I mean, 15-20 was the overshot, right? Say 10 or like another maybe 10 of the 4-point spoons, and then the other 10-15 spoons will be the 3-pointers, right? So if I give her the break. And that's how you count it and say, okay, like for instance, the average for my 40 feeds, the average is going to be, say, I don't know, if I kind of get 100 points, that's the average, right? So, and then that's what you build. And say today you've got the 100 points average for this feeding. So if you want, you can even use some, whatever mobile phone or some Excel, sheets, or create a kind of chart for yourself when you will be rewarding yourself with this type of scores, right? And then you say, okay, that's our current average. And sometimes, during the day you will see also that will help you with the tracking. You will be able to see, what? Okay, so you see this evening by the evening she's more on the 3-pointers and even 2-pointers, right? So maybe I have to give her, maybe also play a little bit with the consistency and so on. So, but then then you will be able to track also your daily distribution. And then on the other hand, that is also going to give you the opportunity. So because, what happens is that typically you only see the highlights. Oh, now, she has eaten, 10 spoons at 5 points. Wow, that's a great celebration. But the thing is that you want to see the compound interest. The compound interest, those ranges gradually moving. And then if you keep track of that, if you create this kind of indexing and point game for yourself, then it becomes the thing, right? So you see it's a what they call nowadays a gamification, right? So it's a gamification of your feeding interface. So then you're saying, okay, you know what? I was able to sort of, we, not I, actually, me and Resi, or, we were able to score 100 points through this feeding, right? Or we were able to score 115 points through this feeding, right? So, and then if you'll see few months down the line that if she used to score maybe 90 points on average, but then she moved to 120, 140 points per feeding, you're saying, hey, I'm actually having some tangible results here, right? I'm having some tangible results, maybe, and if she starts moving further up towards that scale, so you can change your, the same 5-point range, and then you can change the content there. So now, what was your 5-pointer might become the 4-pointer, right? And then you kind of, you add the next dimension. So when it will be not just that, but it will be the full participation when she will be tracking it from the side and adjusting the head in the final way and so on. So that is how you're building it, right? So that's how you're creating the meaningfulness to those routine processes, and then you put the substance into them so that they become not just the routine things that you feed, and then they become the activities which both of you are participating. And again, tracking is absolutely critical, right? Tracking, in that sense, it could be formal, it could be informal, but getting some of this idea of what are the ranges of transition is absolutely essential. And the same thing comes into all the other plays, right? So you see, it comes into other things, like you can also make your own system with the bonus points, if today she decided to do a kind of a powerful, speed or something that you haven't seen before, or it's something
-1.
No, then it becomes, let's say, then it becomes a bonus point, right? So it's a -1 point from the, for your cooking. but then on the other hand, it's a +1 thing because she tried something new, right? So you see, when she tries something creative and breaks out of the routine and gets something that you haven't seen before, well, that is actually achievement. That's play, right? So you see, because this is it, you want the child to start getting her own exploration, her own play. So that's where we're looking at the basic system of the participation, but then from that basic participation, which is led by you, right? So you, because you are the one that is delivering, then we're starting to look at the other side and that extension. So it's a participation led by the child, right? So usually it would be some kind of, you can call it a naughty performances, right? So you see, it's like, where it could be splashing, it could be turning away, it could be something like, it could be mauling or kind of, doing whatever. So, but again, that's the other side. And this is the loop that you want to establish. The part that comes from you, so you have that system of tracking, and then if you see that the averages have shifted, so then you can reassign the new values to your, to your grid, right, to your points, right?
Yeah, of course.
And then on the other hand, there is something that is coming, because that's the part that always exists, right? Because you are the starting point. You are the one who initiate this activity. But then, what we have the next part is, then it's the one where she participates, right? So you see her participation, her discoveries, her plays, and so on. That's a playful activity, right? So that's the loop that comes towards you from her. So, and then that same entry, right, that zoom, also then what you will see, okay, now different people, if it's several people participating in feeding process, for instance, you can give them this assignment, like you can show them how it looks like, so that they will start paying attention, because that's another part, right? So that, by gamification for them, it becomes more fun for them, it becomes, like more meaningful, because that's the whole problem. Routines are important, but they are not meaningful otherwise. So that's really you want to make those routines into being meaningful, and the meaningful becomes through that meaningfulness is created through the awareness, and then it also, on the other hand, it will give you the opportunity to see how the different contexts, right? How different contexts influence the situation, because say you change the positioning or you change the preparation routine, right? Or whatever, and see, oh, well, this on average improves my performance, or this on average kind of makes it more difficult. But maybe, okay, is it worth sort of making a little bit more difficult, if we change, for instance, the light position or something else, right? And then, what kind of difficulties is there? So, you can see that if it's fluctuating maybe 10-15%, that's a tangible difficulty. If something, suddenly her performance drops 50%, oh, that's too much, right? So this is what you want to build, and that's kind of, that's a very simple understanding that how you start and build those things. So that's just...
And it's actually quite beautiful, because you're making routine not only meaningful, but also like an opportunity to connect with your child and explore and play, actually. You're
Absolutely.
exploring together. So that's what you're looking for, to develop a deep connection.
Absolutely, but you see, but that's and that's one of those other things, right? Is that that the deep connection, you want to have it at different levels. So you see, one, because it's a different ways connecting to deep connection to your child through, say, stillness and quietness and like basically when you are moving towards the joint kind of meditative type of experience, right? So then when you are folding activities, right? So that's one type of the deep connection. But on the other hand, there is a type of the deep connection on the other side of the spectrum when you're unfolding it into the activity, which is again a joint activity, when you are both equally, when you are equal participants in that, right? So not you kicking the child, do this, right? Or not them, being lazy and resistant, but finding that balance when both of you can participate. And that's, kind of, and if it's, that's a quiet connection is always available. Activity connection, you kind of have to grow, and sometimes it's going to fluctuate, but if you build it, it will always gradually, unfold in that way. So that's really the lessons of getting it into the practical side.
Beautiful. I think it's very, I don't know, I get enthusiastic about that idea. I
That's
like
very
it.
good. You see, that's kind of when the new things are sort of shaping up, and when what seemed as a routine conversation, right, becomes the source of the inspiration, right? So you see, that's really the great thing.
But
Okay,
great job. Thank you. Thank you again.
so cheers, and we'll meet in the next episode.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.